Entry. Man is not a hidden mystery that is yet to be discovered, even though many people in a dedicated relationship would think otherwise. The essence of man has been a part of human history. It has been there ever since the beginning. Man is a human. Man is a sex. Man is an adult person, an adult male. Man is a person. Man is also a human being. And like all human beings, they have been a part of human history for all time. Man has changed over the years. It has been said that the modern world has changed the role of man. Men live differently than how they had in the past many, many years ago, despite the fact that they have very similarities between ancient men and current modern men. But the way of living for mankind has changed to suit the developing world. This book aims to discover the legend of man, past and present. It hopes to give insight to how man is seen, how man has changed, how man has developed, and how man is yet to develop. Like all living things on the planet, mankind is an evolution. It is something that has been, it is something that is, and it is something that will be. Man is not a word that is going to be deleted from the dictionary. Man is an essential part of humanity. And just because it wears a suit, just because it can now bake, just because its roles have changed, doesn't mean that man will disappear. It just means that it will evolve. Man and the evolution. So let us now think to ourselves, what is man? When I think of man, I think of masculinity. I think of money. I think of sternness. I think of provider. I think of a lot of things that are solid as stone, that are strength, that are iconic. What do you think about? Perhaps you think about a husband, a friend, a lover, someone fun, someone flirty, someone you would like to know. Maybe you think of man and think of a wonderful holiday. Just think of how drab that holiday was. And when a man turned around and smiled at you, it picked up your mood. And picked up the mood of your holiday. Instead of it being a boring holiday, or a drab holiday, or just an ordinary holiday, it was now I had the best time kind of holiday. This is the charm of man. Mankind is often something people admire because man has a lot of charm. So while you are reminiscing about that lovely holiday you had when a stranger who was a man smiled at you and made your holiday something to remember, just think man is hot, just think about the heart of man. Something that you are always aiming to pleasure because you know it is delightful. You might even call that the spirit of man. Either way, I think that is the essential part of man that people aim to reach for. When they look at a man and they can get the best vibe off him, that makes a person feel not just in worship of the man, but feel thrilled that they're giving them their best of attentions. So besides being an essential part of humanity, man is also something of worth. So now that you have gathered your thoughts about what you think is man, let us now delve into the different aspects of mankind. Thank you very much, and I look forward for you to continue on this journey with me. The myth of man. So we're now going to be looking into man and myth. Man and myth is basically the idea of man that came from long ago. There are many different myths in mankind. I think one of the most obvious example of man is, of course, King Arthur. He lived during a time when men obviously ruled the world. He was very passionate, courageous, very handsome, and he knew the role of man began and left with a royal title. Royal titles are, of course, linked to money. Kings often had a great deal of wealth, and if they didn't, they had themselves and a lot of people around them who knew how to get money out of other people. Kings lived in a great big house called a palace. Obviously, palaces are more like the size of either a mansion or a mountain. Probably a mountain. Because despite the fact that we draw palaces as fairly small, more like mansions-like sizes, they were once really huge, more like mountains. So I would call a palace, a home made out of a mountain. A mountain in itself is a symbolism of great strength, a barrier which people find hard to climb over, a challenge, an enjoyment to seek after, just be able to climb to the top of it and back. This is emblem of strength, is very iconic of mankind, but let's go back to King Arthur. King Arthur was a man. Actually, he started his kingship as a boy. He was able to draw a sword from a stone. As you can see, you have very clear examples of masculinity there. Even as a boy, King Arthur showed signs of a king as a boy, and that is also a tale of romance. Just think of any boy who shows promise to reach to the stars as a singer or an actor. Well, a king was a different version of a celebrity. He was someone people wanted to give a crown to. So anyways, King Arthur lived his life on a horse, by sword, with wearing armor. He was able to gain admirers because he was full of blonde hair, blue-eyed beauty. And even at his worst moment, he held the dignity of a man who had been a king. Of course, he married into a woman who was not a man, but an essential part of his title, kingship romance, and the woman was lesser than him, but he gave her all the adulation that a man could. He gave her a home, he gave her a crown, he gave her a title, he gave her everything any woman would want out of a man, and in return he was deceived by her. He ended up watching her get away on a horse with another man who was just as romantic as he, but did not hold the title of king. Anyway, all these masculine traits in this story of King Arthur, from battle to battle, from woman to king, man to woman, woman to man, all these things are very iconic of masculinity. And I think that really dresses up the romance of King Arthur, because, let's face it, that myth is something everyone still admires. People make movies out of that myth because it's such a romantic tale. I think a lot of people want the world to be like the story of King Arthur. They just don't have anyone in the modern world who can fulfill that role. The closest a person has to a king in the modern world is in government, and the romance of the king, the raw natural king, with their castle has dwindled away into a general state building. So, but people do love the myth of mankind. I mean, when you haven't got a very modern story, you've got the beginnings of mankind, stating tales of men who were either full-blooded men or half wild creature. They were dangerous, they were deadly, they would want to mate, and when they had kids, they would naturally want to kill them. This is a more ancient myth that developed from the BC era, and the danger, the kindness, the ferociousness, the wildness, not knowing if man was a beast or a man, seemed to have been the romance from long, long ago. And you can still read it in myths today. Once again, danger, strength, power, wildness, all these are male. All these are gender strengths. They are the things that fuel the idea of man. But it wasn't until the modern world that mankind developed toys. And you can see that early on, when toys first started to get manufactured, men were a firm body of muscle. They were fit, they were strong, they had a good endowment in their genital areas. They had a chiseled face. So when the toy manufacturers brought out what they thought was the image of mankind, it was once again these images of strength and power and masculinity combined in the form of a plastic toy. So the people of modern generations were stylizing off what people in past generations have also made as myth, these emblems of strength, empowerment, are the icons that have created the myth of mankind since humans began telling stories and writing. So, of course, this leads to stigma. It leads to an image development of mankind. We're not going to delve into that in this chapter, but it has led to iconography against man. In the modern world, this has, of course, been deciphered as sexist, something negative, something real men cannot reach, but it's been there since people began to talk of mankind, because I think this is the romance of man. Even from BC, when many people were illiterate, not everyone could read or write, this seems to be the strong idea of who man should be, who they were, who they should be. So it's been there all along. It has been what has made the myth of man. The image of man. The image of man bounces right off the myth of man. You think of man and you think of someone who has a good body, and in the myth of man, they barely wore any clothes. In the modern world, however, it's transformed from being a bare masculine body to being a masculine body with clothes on. The image of man is presented in many forms. In the modern world, the image of man began as a poster or a photograph. Men were seen as strong, well-muscled. If someone has a good picture of a man, it's because they can show their beauty and masculinity at the same time. Many men learn to flex their muscles just to be able to live up to the idea of how men should look. When a man had muscles, he was considered more of a man, and this was presented in the form of art, photographs, posters. If a man had a chiseled face, he was considered a particularly good-looking man, and this ended up evolving onto television and film, where icons were the thing that fueled the pictures, the movie, or the TV show. People can generally see when a man is good looking. They have a good body, which is fit and well muscled. They have a good face, which is chiseled, kind eyes. They're very tall, which is pretty necessary for when someone's trying to film a man as a man. If they're taller than the woman, they're considered a real man. They have to somehow show intelligence. When a man has a bit of intelligence inside their minds, they're considered a worthy man. In the modern world, wearing certain types of clothes also makes the man. So all these were things that people looked for before they casted anyone for the TVs or the movie shows. When they saw a particularly good-looking man, they said, yes, we can make a picture out of them, and they put them on the TV screen. This is why people want to watch movies and TV shows, because they see a person who is like a daydream or so good looking they want to daydream about them. This is a very romantic view of the image of man. It sort of creates wants, need, and daydreams, something people will want to come back to. When someone makes a movie or a TV show, they make it so that people will want to watch it over and over again. They make it attractive, they make it appealing, they make the characters say things that people want to hear, so that when they are in the right mood, they'll settle down in front of the TV or go to the cinema to watch something which they want to see. The image of man is seen as very attractive. It might also be considered a sexual icon. People are attracted to them sexually, and so they want to see the image of man over and over again. Sexuality is a big part in what is the masculine image. And in the past, when a man was a man, they were sexually well inept. They were attractive to look at. They had sizable crotch area, and they were good in bed. They were particularly good lovers. This is another image of mankind. They were sexy, sexual, and very good in bed. This helps to arouse people towards men, seeing them as a sexual icon. And this has made man, once again, something people want to look up to. The only trouble with the image of man is that not many men actually feel like it's realistic. And they can say, oh, nice movie of that particular good-looking person in the movies, but what about the average Joe? What about us? What if we are a man and we don't fit the image of man? What should we be doing about it? This has led to some protests in the modern world in particular, where men are campaigning against the image of man because they feel it's unrealistic. They feel like it's something they can't live up to. It's a modern world that's made the image of man a little bit more lenient. But up until the 1960s or 1970s, the image of a well-chiseled masculine man was well set. It's actually late 1970s to 1980s where the image of man began to be broken down. And then 1990s and onwards, there has been an altered image of man to suit people of many images. But before those eras, the image of man was more rock solid. But since the investigation of the thought of how men see the image of man, once it was realized men would try to commit suicide if they weren't fitting into a particular image. They were feeling very negative about imagery. When people were negatively affected, this led to protests and movements to change from a block image of how man should be to allow men of various images into the modern world so that they don't have to feel as though they need to be a particular image to be able to succeed or be seen in a good light. So the image of man has morphed and wandered, particularly with help of these movements, which were realized with some research. So once I realized the image of man was particularly negative, it sort of started to wander off until it's been normalized into the ordinary man against what used to be the image of man. So it's relaxed the rule of the image of man quite a lot. It's allowed for many different images of mankind, from obese to just general layabout to someone ordinary or someone successful. You know, there are many images now instead of just one image that man was being pressured to reach. So the modern world has humanized the image of mankind to make it realistic for various types of men and not just an ideal which would make an attractive man. So the image of man has changed in the more recent years, but the central idea of an attractive man or how men should be has been evident. But more than just looks and icons, we also have the image of men, how they dress. Long ago in BC, they might have just been wearing underwear, something that looked more like a G-string, also called a loincloth. Men were supposed to be very proud of their bodies and wear nothing but loincloths and capes at best. This was to ensure that they showed off their masculinity by showing off their bodies. But no one in the modern world, unless they were a stripper, would actually wear such things. But that used to be sort of the image of man. Then it transcended into men wearing dresses. Before they wore pants, they wore dresses, skirts, something flamboyant, something made of silk, something made of velvet, something made... And so, even in times of kingship, men were wearing skirts and dresses, tight tops with skirts. This might have been because the women were making the clothing and they developed dresses before they developed clothes for men. But it could be that men just like dresses, so that's a pretty scary thought to the modern world, because nowadays wearing a dress as a man is something only few people do, namely cross-dressers. And it's seen as something negative. It's not seen as anything positive. But in ancient times, when you see men developing their wardrobe, they wore dresses pretty early on. And of course, this moved on to wearing your general pants and tops, which were once made out of fur, leather, silk, and cotton. And this transcended once again to wearing pants and tops with buckles. Pants and tops, actually, they wore pants and tops with stockings at first, and then they wore socks and buckles, and then they wore suits, and now they wear shorts and pants and casual tops. So that what men have been idolized as wearing has changed from ancient times to now, and it has been neutralized once again in the modern world to include the casual man who just likes to wear clothes that are comfy, namely pants, shorts, and tops. So now that we have discussed the image of man, we're now going to move on to the next chapter, which is the role of man. The role of man. You have ancient man. Ancient man hunted. Ancient man fought others. Ancient men protected their families. He was a hunter-gatherer. He was a father. He was a protector. And at sometimes he was also a king. Then time moved on. Society developed. And man was seen as someone intelligent. They wrote, they read, they began to talk about how to make the world a world of peace. They developed ideas and science. So, because women were not actually allowed to generally express their intelligence, man was the first thinkers of the world. So besides being able to make a family, protect their family, they began to make money for their family. They began to talk to family about their ideas and inventions. They began to want to be intelligent. This led, of course, to inventions being invented to make life better. Society building bigger buildings for the general public to live better in. It developed into leading society with the development of government, where men would be able to look after all of society. Not just their wives, not just their house, but everyone in society. So the intelligent men sort of took over the world for a while. This was then redeveloped in the modern world, where men who were generally lazing around with a good family home, a good job, good kids, the role of man against woman changed with the revolution of woman wanting to be equal to men. So then the role of man changed. He stopped being the leader of a family and started to notice women were a challenge, and instead of going home to a dinner, they began to see that they were expected to cook their dinner, to clean the houses, even after their work. And of course, this then developed into women working instead of men. So, in the current world, women are doing the work, and it's men who can make a choice whether to work or stay at home. If they stay at home, they're cleaning the house, they're looking after the kids, they're doing the shopping, they're talking on the phones, they're making sure there's dinner on the table when their working woman comes home. So in that regard, the role of men has changed from being the sole protector, provider of the family and the community to being the person who is being provided for. But of course, not every man in the current modern world is letting the woman work instead of them. It just gives them a choice of whether they want to or not. So if men are not working and the women are, it just makes sense for the men to be looking after the home. If they're both working, then they take turns in who cooks, who cleans. You know, the men are expected to be more versatile than what they used to be, because women are not sitting at home doing the cooking and cleaning for them. So the role of modern man has developed into versatility, where they can do anything the woman can, just as the woman can do anything the man can. This is supposed to be equality, but it's also changed the role of men from the beginning. When men were the sole providers, protectors, the warriors, the major role play of functionality within society and every household. So this has led to the role of man becoming more complex. It's not simple for the man, it's not simple for the woman, but it gives the man and the woman more choice on what they could be doing. It's not set in stone. It's allowing them to pick up more skills, develop more mentally and physically, and it allows them to make more choices. This can be fun, it can be displeasure. Some men can say, well, I remember when, but it's becoming less of a routine function and more developed from choice, where men get to choose what they should be doing out of a huge range of things. So this has been the development of the role of man. So now that we've discussed the role of man, we're now going to take a look at man in the modern world. Man in the modern world. The modern world has developed from war. So early in the more modern century, men were expected to go into the army. In fact, in the beginning of army development, men were chosen as opposed to women to work in the army. The army was an extension of men. men were living up to their ancient past of protecting and being expected to put their wives down on a plate to fight for their country. So, even in the modern world, the early views of a man's role as masculinity and protector of humanity, fighter of humanity, it was from the iconic thought of what a man was, and it encouraged for men to fight, men to use their muscles to work heavy machinery, men to protect. So the beginnings of the modern world had men put in under the flag of iconic roles. A man was the stronger sex, a woman was a weaker sex. So in regards to army life, a man was what humanity wanted in the army, because women were weak and they couldn't do anything. But of course, the modern world's been changing man. Ever since many men lost their lives in battle, it was probably because of a necessity that people began to realize women had skills and strengths as well, because a lot of men died in those army days. A lot of men lost their lives. So humanity had fewer people, and a lot of people who were left over after a war were women. And of course, there were few men, and most of the men who remained were fairly old, or the older generations who were and also people who were unable to work in the army because of handicaps. So, a lot of the world's best men were already gone because they, being so strong, so handsome, had been put in the armies, and a lot of them died actually. So, ever since those army days, men's role has changed, but they were still stuck against iconography. Because men could work so well, they were encouraged to be smart, and so they're expected to get good grades. They're expected to know things to do with cars and things that were modern. They could build cars, they could toy with the radios to make them work, they could make things out of metal and steel and bolts and nuts and hammers. So, in the beginning of the modern world, the intelligent New Age man was not just handy, they were also smart, and their intelligence made them a range of different emotions. So they're no longer just strong and grumpy, but they were started to be emotional, empathetic, because their intelligence had been given a boost up. They were still expected to be the provider. When they weren't working in the army, they're expected to be working. Doesn't matter if they've had a heart attack, the real men can suck it up and still go into an office even if they've just had a stroke or they've just been injured. So men was supposed to be sort of like a cartoon in a way. They're supposed to be hit down, but they get back up and they start being men again, functioning in just the way they had been before they ever had an accident that has crippled their health or their mobility. So, men were expected to make money. Of course, this changed with the evolution of women who wanted to get out there and start earning their own money, didn't just want to be a housewife anymore, and want to have more intelligence and everything. So, men was next challenged. I mean, the morph of their place in the world was because women wanted a place too, and this changed men also. So, men began getting more slack with the weights. They didn't have to be muscly anymore. They could be chubby if they wanted to be. So with the moving of the image of man, men didn't have to do weights like they used to. They didn't have to be particularly fit. They just had to still be providers, to be fathers and family men. This changed in around 1970s, 1980s, where men were particularly introduced to drugs. This led to irresponsibilities of men. So it made men sort of dangerous for a while. If they fell between the cracks, they'd end up as a thug. And this sort of transcended in late 1980s to 1990s, where men stopped being thugs and people with guns and criminals, and they started to need to be more family orientated, safer. It began with the evolution of man to a high standard. So there was the man executive, which was the most modern man in the world. He was successful, wore suits all the time, always be out on business meetings, be always on the phone, not able to look after the family because they're just so busy. And this relaxed into men being just the family man. So the current modern standard of man is the highest idea is family man, where men can just casually be men. They don't have to wear a suit. All they need to do is be out of work. A lot of men now work from home because society has evolved with internet, and now people can work from home a lot more. So man's not expected to wear suits anymore like they had been back in 1980s to early 1990s. They can now just be more casual, lay about the house, but work, on their computers. So they don't have to be the provider of the family. Women can also provide, they just have to be there. They don't have to have families, they can be individuals. It's more relaxed now. We've also got the relaxed man trend going on now. For a while, in late 1990s, men were expected to have dyed hair and spiked, gelled back hair, but once again, that was just a small fad that was developed mainly by boy groups, and it falls back when people realize, well, people just still look like people, better just continue the casual man. So we're in the casual man standard currently, and that is man in the modern world. The Black Book of Man. Now that we talked about the myth of man, the image of man, the role of man, men, how they're seen in the modern world, we're not going to talk about something more exciting. We're going to talk about sex. Now, a lot of men do have a black book. They have a list of names stuck under their bed in a little black book. That's supposed to be the list of successful relationships which had led to the bedroom. A man with a black book is seen as successful in a relationship-wise. The more names they have in that book, the more people they've been with, and that is a mark of success. Congratulations to the man. But not everyone likes that, because when black books developed, once again in around the 1970s, 1980s, so did disease. And it's because of black books men began to spread diseases. They became more experimental with who they slept with. They slept with a variety of different age groups just to fill up the black books. So this is when sex became complicated, because men had diseases. A lot of men were spreading the diseases that they had, and this led to outbreaks of sexual transmitted diseases. This isn't very sexy in itself, but often the more promiscuous man, the more likelihood to spread of diseases. So this is the negative aspect of sexual intercourse. What can happen when you've slept with too many people in too many different ways, and you've had too many lovers because you're just wanting to fill out your black book. But in general terms, when you're not talking about the complexities of diseases versus sex, in general terms, men are supposed to just sleep with women. A lot of men don't. A lot of men want to sleep with men just as much as they want to sleep with women. This could be because a man's best friend is not often a woman. It's often the man that they met as a kid and grew up with, talking to about life and sexual relationships and other things. So this led to bonding man and man. And of course this naturally leads to experimental sex. Experimenting with what it feels like to be with the same person of the same sex. So men have not always been just attracted to women. In fact, I think it's the Bible that says the beginning of mankind was a man and a woman in the Garden of Eden. This heterosexualizes the view of men and sex, but it doesn't mean that that was actually the beginning. So a lot of men, even in ancient times, men were getting with men. It seems to be a strength in the budding relationship of between two loyal friends. The closer a man gets to another man, the more likelihood they're going to want to have sex with them. So you have what is. I mean, men have been bisexual since BC. And you have the image of man. Technically speaking, the Bible says man should be with a woman, and most people in the modern world would like a man to be with a woman. That makes sense. It's a successful relationship because when those two get together, they can have kids. They develop their communities by having the next generation. Technically speaking, that is the correct version of how humanity should be. But really, gods of ancient past often had bisexual orientation. Man has always wanted to be with woman and man. That seems to be the crux of their choices from long, long ago. And this still stands today. Despite the fact that a lot of people want it centralized on man and woman, men still want to get together with other men. It seems to be a mixture of a turn on and a letdown. Until in the modern world, people are saying one way or another way, just so that people cannot get confused on who they should be with or how they should see someone who wants to be with both sexes. This has led to the development of gay society in the modern world, which is the heterosexual world. You often find gay groups, gay society is very small against what is the normal world, which is supposed to be the more heterosexual world. It doesn't mean that people in the heterosexual world still don't date or have sex with men. It just means that it's preferred if they just at least try their best to be heterosexual. Often men in the heterosexual world, if they want to get with a man, it's done behind the closet. It's done when backs are turned. It's done without eyes on them. Maybe it's done in the dark. But no doubt it still happens. But the evolution of gay communities, which is very, very small in the world, has allowed men to choose one side or another. Generally, if you're in a gay community, decided, hey, I want to be gay, I want to be with a man, I'm a man who wants to be with a man forever, they'll be pressured to just be with men. This helps stop them spread diseases from their gay relationships to women. Stops mass scale diseases from breaking out like it had in the 1980s with AIDS. And it also keeps women safe from discrimination. They're with a man who wants to be with another man more than them. So when a man has made a choice whether they want to be gay or heterosexual, it sort of helps to break the negative things that impact the world because they want a gay relationship. So this has also developed men in the modern world. A lot of gay men are seen as fairly feminine, able to cross-dress, able to be deceiving, very violent. And the heterosexual man is the one that people will want to be around more because they're not seedy, they're not deceiving, they're not dishonest. They're just happy to live life pleasantly in an approved way. But it is clear that men can make choices. They've made choices in the past, but now they can make choices of who they want to be with and when. But if someone finds out someone's gay, they will be pressured to join a gay group and clear the space in the heterosexual world, because this will just pop them. If they get into the group and become unhealthy, they might it might make them realize, hey, I don't want to be in this group. Let's go back in the modern world and be with the way people want me to be. So it can turn them off from wanting to be with men, but it can also give them support for them to be who they want to be amongst people who are like-minded. So it can either have them realize, hey, I don't want to be here, or make them realize, hey, I love it here. I want to be here forever, and I feel better here. So, the Black Book of Man is admittedly fairly open, but society doesn't pressure men to want to be gay. They sort of want more men to be just heterosexual so that they can be idolized and seen as something people want to think about or be with or be amongst. So society definitely wants men to have a black book, and they want them to be heterosexual. It doesn't mean they have to be. They can choose if they want to be. They still have that evolved choice. Now we're going to, the choices of man. Now we're going to talk about the choices of man. What men can choose. Men can choose between a lot more choices these days. And it's aimed to make them more conscientious about who they want to be, what they want in life, what they want to circle their ambitions towards. The choices of man is a freedom. It's not an inhibition. A lot of people think with the evolution of the modern world and so many choices, people are being handicapped because they have so many choices. They don't know what to choose, and they ended up dabbling here, dabbling there, and become unhappy because they've had too many choices and they don't know which road will lead to the right road. There's no such thing anymore as a right or wrong road. There's just a choice. Whether you want to choose section A, section B, section C. And even when they've chosen, they'll need to choose again. A, B, C. And once they've chosen that road, they may have to choose left, right, up, or down. It's sort of like a video game in a way. The way you can choose to do many different things to be able to win the game. But in the real world, there is no winning of any game. There's just the outcome that happens after you choose. So the choices of man is very assorted. They can choose whether or not they want to work. They can choose where they want to live. They can choose what kind of car they can drive. They can choose whether they want to have a wife, a partner, or many girlfriends, many friends. They can choose to be alone or with other people. They can choose between different kinds of jobs, whether they want to work in a supermarket or an office. Some men play the field. They work in both. They work in a supermarket in the morning and an office even in the evening. Choices are abundant. I could say so many things of what choices are available. Because there are millions of choices that a person can make in their lives. Their lives develop as a consequence to their choices when they choose. It gives them a different next stage. And if they think, oh, this life is too narrow, let's drop what we're doing and choose something else, just to end up something different, because otherwise they can see their future. And it's like, I can see what I'm going to be doing in 10 years' time. I don't think that's kind of boring. Why don't I just drop everything and choose something else? People can do that. They can just choose to start again. Choice seems to be a branch of modernism. It seems to be something people have more freedom to do. Something that man has more freedom to do. It's to lead to happiness, to more success. But not every man in the world where they can choose has a successful story. Some fail dismally. Some fail and then pick themselves up and make a right choice, which leads them to a better direction. But whatever the case is, there is definitely choice. Choice after choice after choice. A man doesn't just want to be with a woman if they're in a particular relationship. They choose to be. If a man wants to choose to be with another man, they can do that. They can say, this is my choice. I choose to be. If a man wants to be working, they will choose to work. If a man wants to be sitting at home drinking, they will choose to sit at home and drink instead of work. If a man wants to travel around the world, they will choose to be able to travel. If a man wants to be centralized in one area, they will choose. If a man wants to move from one area to another area because they just realized, hey, it floods here, they will choose that. Man in the modern world chooses. There's only thing that men in the modern world cannot choose to do, and that is build a castle. It seems the choice for that has gone with the era of castle building. Only men who make sets for movies can choose to build something as big as a castle. Otherwise, I'm not even sure if it's legally allowed to be able to build yourself a castle as a residence. So that is one choice that's sort of off the board in the modern world. I don't think it's possible for many people to choose to build a castle for themselves. So that's a bad thing about the modern world. People cannot be kings anymore. They're expected to be just common, everyday people. But saying that they can choose where they want to live, or what kind of house, or what kind of car, there are many choices. And they will choose. The future of man. The future of man, what is it going to be like? What will men be like in the future? Will they be still wearing their jeans and tops? Will they evolve and have to choose army life once again like they had in ancient past many, many times, where men were bred for army work? No one really thinks that is going to be their choice. If they want to choose to be in the army, they can be in the army, but when they're not in the army, they don't have to be. No one thinks that they're going to be fighting other countries in the future. In the future, after all the wars are over, there's going to be less threat to communities and society and more peace. That seems to be the future that people in the army are fighting for. They're actually fighting to be rewarded with peace, where countries don't feel like they will have to fight other countries, where they can stick to their own country and just live in peace. The future of mankind, no one knows what man's going to be like in the future. No one knows what kind of clothes they'll be wearing, what kind of hairdos they'll be wearing, what kind of houses they'll be living in, what kind of cars they'll be driving. People think within the next 10 or 20 years, people are going to stop driving cars and start driving cars that hover in the air. That is an evolution of the choices that will be available as time goes on. But in essence, I don't think the future of man is going to be any different than how it is today. If the future includes the current modern society, they will still be needing to make choices of how they're going to live their lives. No one's going to aim to be a god or a king like they had been ages and ages ago. Man is going to be centralized around society and live as a member of society, as a man, where they get to choose what they want in life. It's going to be a life of choice, maybe a life of luxury, and what they do in life is just going to be a product of their choices. I don't imagine it's going to be any different, but I think the world is going to be a little bit different. I mean, already people fly drones, but in the future they might fly aircrafts that hover in the air. They might look like a taxi on floating on the air, like a hovercraft, or they could look more like an alien ship, like a pod that is often seen in, say, modern cartoons like the Jetsons, where they hover around in little flying aircraft that looks a little bit like planes and shoot out from the buildings like pods and fly to work. I mean, maybe buildings will be hovering in the sky. No one really knows how society will develop, but I think in essence, man is going to live how they live now, by their choices. Their role as men, I don't believe the role of man is going to go back to how it had been when men were iconized on this hunter, provider, protector of families and communities. I think it's going to be like it is now. The future of man will be able to choose whether they want to be heterosexual, bisexual, gay, whether they want to be with a family or without one, whether they want to be working or just living on government pensions, or whether they want to work from home or in an office. All these choices that are available now will be available in the future, with possibly the exclusion of government pensions. But essentially, I think everyone's fairly comfortable in the world of choice, and this is the future of mankind, to be able to live by their choices and not by stereotypes or iconography. And they're going to continue to be developed. The iconography is going to continue to be developed to include the man who makes choices, because it's pretty good to live life by choice, where they don't have to wear a suit if they don't want to, where they can wear casual clothes. It's because they're not expected to dress up in any fancy way in particular, where they can choose family or choose a single life, where they can choose many partners or one partner. The world of choice is the future of man. And I can imagine it's going to be a very good future indeed. Something men can look forward to. They don't have to be a stereotype anymore. They just have to be whatever they want to be. They just have to be human. A human, a person, an adult. The things that are outlined in the dictionary is a good. They're just going to be a state. They're going to be part of the community. They're going to be with responsibilities and without them if they want. They're just going to be living by choice. And that is the future of man.